So do you think even before high school, or more is sort of coming in high school?
Um, I would think before high school, or maybe in the middle. But yeah, maybe in the middle because there was always those mood swings, but the anxiety attacks only started. Um, I want to say grade 10 was my first anxiety attack. So I was about 15, and when you're 15 in high school, and just this is now 10 years ago for me. Uh, it it's just a whole nother monster because you really like you don't understand a lot of things to begin with when you're 15, and now you have this mental health, I guess, disorder that is really like coming into effect, and it's something that grown adults have a hard time understanding. So being 15 in high school, there's a lot of things going on inside your body to begin with, and now you have this anxiety, um, finally coming out. It certainly made it certainly made it difficult. Um, but I don't know if there's one particular scenario or experience that happened that I can attribute everything to. It might have been like a collective, because I'm very hard on myself as it is. So I do believe that some of it has come from my own criticism of myself. Um, and then on top of that, a lot of other things like at home. Um, at the time, there was some stuff going on one side of the family that wasn't so good. So I think that might have come into play, kind of being on edge all the time, feeling like I was walking on tippy toes or walking on eggshells all the time. So I think living in that constant state of being on edge and kind of like being very like jumpy and like that type of those types of things, I think that also heightened the anxiety, and eventually it just kind of jumped out at me, and I still didn't understand it, but I mean that was just the beginning, and it's helping me now, even thinking back to it's weird actually because I feel like I almost go back in time when I think about it. I can feel myself being in that moment and being in that situation and everything I felt. Like even talking about it, I can feel my heart rate going up. Not at dangerous levels, just heads up. Like, but yeah, I could feel it go up because I remember that experience. Like I could feel my finger wanting to like tap, but but yeah, no, it's just it's a crazy experience. But you never blame yourself for it, never. And that's one thing I always had to remind myself, like it's it's not your fault that you're having these thoughts. You have to remember too, like you're not your thoughts. Those negative thoughts, when they come in, you are not your thoughts, and that's something that really helped me throughout this entire experience, because it's been, wow, it's crazy to think it's been like 10 years that I've been wrestling with this anxiety, and it's I think I'm winning now.
And can you tell me, so you when you were in CEGEP, it kind of got, then it really overwhelmed you and it
Yeah.
stopped you on your path.
Oh yeah.
Um, what was it that helped you to find your way back onto your path? Like what what did you do? What did
Okay.
like if you want to just
Like
share if there's anybody watching that maybe is in a place where things are starting to come over them, or they have a client or a student who's in a situation where they're not in control anymore and they're not okay.
okay.
What did you do? Like what was your process to bring you into a place where you started to get better and feel like you were back in control of your life?
Okay. For me personally, it took me a little while. There was a lot of denial at first, um, throughout throughout the process, because it becomes easier once you accept it. Because once you accept it, then you can start saying, all right, well, I need help. Before that happened, it was a lot of like blaming others, taking that anger out on the wrong people, and what finally, I guess, what finally made it click, it had to be me though. It had to be me that understood it, because that's the only way you're ever gonna have it click, is you have to say, yes, I have anxiety and I'm going to get this fixed. So once it clicked, because I started realizing your friends, your family, they're only gonna take that mistreatment for so long. And I'd rather have them in my life than out of my life. And I knew that I needed good people around to keep pushing me, and give me that little nudge to get help. I think you really need to surround yourself with positive people and people who really care about you. And so it can be hard. It certainly can be hard, but it's not impossible. I used to think it was impossible. I used to think I'm never gonna get through this. It was something that I used to sit there and try to envision my future, and I couldn't envision it without having anxiety every day. So having good people around telling me like, this isn't forever. This isn't forever. Keep going, keep pushing forward, keep getting that help, keep going to your meetings. It encouraged me, but I also had to suck it up and say, yeah, I have anxiety. I need to take that next step, because if I do sit and stay and just dwell in this situation, it is gonna last forever, and that's self-inflicted. It's it's self-inflicted, and you're gonna live your life in a way that you don't want to. It's gonna go against everything that you're trying to push forward for. It's just gonna keep holding you back, and if you let that happen, it's not gonna be too fun. So it's a lot of self-discipline. It's a lot of, as repetitive as, not everyone wants to go to meetings all the time and talk about their feelings and things like that. But it helps once you start going, and once you take that step to get to know the person that you're sitting down with and talking with. It really becomes easier, because that's what ended up pushing me forward. I had good people with me, but I'm very reflective. I like to sit down and reflect on myself and what has happened leading up to certain situations. So sitting down with a psychosocial worker that was set up at the school for me really helped, because I identified certain triggers, certain things that I could fix. We started slow. We didn't start slow. We started small. Sorry, and you work your way up. So one of the first things was making sure you're grounded, making sure you're present in a situation, because you can get trapped in your mind with anxiety. Well, just as a human being, you can get trapped in your mind, but with anxiety, you can get trapped and not get out. And what I mean by that is sometimes you start thinking of a situation that has happened in the past, or you create a situation in your head that hasn't happened or will not happen, and it brings your heart rate up, and and you you see one scenario and then it just keeps going. It's a snowball effect, and you start thinking of the worst possible outcome for that situation, and it's usually something that's like very close to you or very important to you, and from there, yeah, it begins to snowball and become this giant snowball, and you you get trapped in like your mind becomes a maze. So wherever you go, there's like another situation that's worse than the next, and this entire time that this is happening in your head, you're really just sitting in class, trying to focus on what your prof is saying, or what a classmate is saying, and you don't hear a single thing, despite you can hear everything, but you're not listening. Everything you're trapped in that maze that's your mind, and I think that was one of the hardest things. That's why I had to leave school, because it was just going to affect everything, and I couldn't let that happen. So I think, yeah, sitting down and really reflecting on myself and really trying to understand that there is something wrong, and that I do need to get help. That's what it took. It took months. It took a year for me to understand that. But once I finally did, I had to reflect on myself, my relationships with people, my relationship with the school, and everything I wanted to do in the future, because I had so many things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't physically get myself to do it if I still had this anxiety all bottled up and not dealt with. So it's a lot of it is on yourself, and taking the proper steps. And you can have people tell you all the time, encourage you all the time, but if you don't go and take those steps, because they can't go to the meetings for you, they can support you, and that helps. It really helps to have that support, that really good support system. But when they're telling you, yeah, it's a good idea to go to a meeting, and you don't go, then what help is that? You have to help yourself in these situations.
And so you had, so you were, first, if I understand it correctly, first it was the feeling like something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was like comparing around, am I the only person who has this, or other people have this?
Mm-hmm.
Then there was sort of a time when everything was getting not good, and
Yeah.
just getting worse, and you were kind of lashing out and blaming other people, and it wasn't working out, and then people started to suggest maybe it's like you need help,
Yeah.
and then you were like, no I don't, I'm fine, and then finally it was like, yeah I do. Okay, yeah I do.
Yeah, because it all really came out in CEGEP, and when I'm there and trying to get through everything, and get through assignments and deal with all the stress, but at the same time, like I'm being so rude to the people I find the closest to me, my very good friends, my family, and when I would say mean things, not even an hour later, maybe even 20 minutes later, I'm sitting there like, wow, that was really uncalled for. That they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve to be spoken to like that. And I sort of realized, like, wait, maybe I'm bipolar? Like, I there were so many different things like floating around. wondering, personality disorder, bipolar, anxiety, depression, this, that, like so many things. And even that becomes a snowball. So I have that on my mind, and then along with the actual situation. And not once did, like looking back, like not once did my friends say it in a mean way. Like, well, I meant you need help. Like, no, it was sitting me down and saying in the nicest way possible, like, well, maybe there's something. Because at the time, it was like I was gonna be mad about anything. Like you could bring up constructive criticism, and I was not gonna take it the right way. So I had some really really good friends and roommates that sat me down and said, look, this is something that needs to be addressed, because there is something going on, and maybe it would be good to just, it was like a suggestion, maybe it would be good to go see a doctor. And at first I brushed it off, but then when they said it like the second time, it sort of started to click. Like, maybe they aren't just saying that out of spite. Like, maybe it's a real suggestion. And it was a hard pill to swallow, because not everyone wants to admit there's something wrong. Actually nobody wants to admit that. It's not the nicest feeling. Like, hey, I don't feel right. Hey, there's something wrong with me. It's not a bad thing though. It's never a bad thing saying that it's never a bad thing saying that there's something wrong.